Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So when Boris Johnson waded into this debate yesterday, in full knowledge that plenty of people in this country will be cheering him to the rafters for effectively being rude about people who are critical of Israel, do you think he did it on purpose, or do you think he did it by accident? I don't know. And the broader question is one that I really do hope, and this is why at the top of at the end of Nick's show, the little trail that I do at 9:45, I said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again in the hope of getting a different result. It seems to apply to a conversation about Israel on a slightly depressing state. You always go down this road of claim and counterclaim, and yet I don't think we will always get the same result. You've been incredibly gracious to me over the years in just putting a little bit of effort into your thoughts. It's why if you rang in before I started talking to tell me how great Boris is, I probably won't take your call. It kind of proves the point that I'm trying to disprove. Yes, Boris is great. He's done absolutely the right. There's a few there already. No offence, Sharon in Edgware. But if you rang in before I started talking, how can you possibly know what question I was going to ask? And the question I am going to ask is this. What's wrong with a boycott? And is Boris right when he describes supporters of it as corduroy-jacketed, snaggle-toothed lefty academics? I was going to point out Stephen Hawking is among the number of the supporters, but I don't know. That probably proves Boris's point, doesn't he? Stephen Hawking, a corduroy-jacketed, snaggle-toothed lefty academic? Yeah, okay. Also one of the cleverest people on the planet. I think we can all agree on that. So why would we write off one of the cleverest people on the planet? Why would we write off huge numbers of both countries and organisations who suggest that one way to make Israel think twice about its continuing policy of illegal occupation would be to stop buying stuff that comes from those lands? Well, how do you know what comes from those lands? At the moment, weirdly, believe it or not, you don't. But the EU is about to change that. The European Union is insisting that labels be put on any products that have been made in the West Bank settlements. Guess what Israel has called it? You don't need to guess, do you? Anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic to suggest that goods that have come from the so-called settlements should be labelled from the West Bank. That's anti-Semitic. That's according to the Israeli government, not according to newspaper columnists or cheerleaders or head cases. That's according to the government. It's come from a settlement. I'd like to know that. Oh, that's anti-Semitic. Well, can we put a label on it, say from the West Bank rather than just made in Israel, so that I know whether or not it's come from the bit of that part of the world that is sovereign democracy or the bit that is illegally and militarily occupied? No, you can't. You want that distinction, you are anti-Semitic. And then you think, crikey, how can anyone be nuts enough? How can a government be nuts enough to call you anti-Semitic for suggesting that you want some labelling, some accurate geographical labelling? Well, then you have to remember that you're talking about the same regime that tried to claim the Holocaust wasn't Hitler's idea. And then you realise why, when I tell my producer that we're going to be talking about Israel every morning, her face falls faster than a very fast thing in fast land. Shall we have a little listen to Boris? Can you bear it? It's important. Here you go.
I reject completely the suggestion by some corduroy-jacketed, snaggle-toothed lefty academics in the UK.
Can't resist it, can he? Can't resist it, giving the audience what they want rather than caring about truth, compassion or facts. And if, as the United Nations has adjudged, you consider the occupation by Israel of land that is not by rights theirs to be wrong, as the United Nations has done, if you have a historical affinity or claim upon that land, what do you want the rest of the world to do? How would you get the rest of the world to put pressure on Israel to withdraw? How would you do it? Well, the way that some people have decided to do it is by a process of so-called BDS, boycotting, divestment of investments in Israeli companies and sanctions, not dissimilar to what was done to the white minority rule in South Africa under apartheid, with some success. But Boris Johnson yesterday derided people who support that programme of boycotting in terms so crass and undiplomatic that invitations that had been extended to him by Palestinian charities were withdrawn. And what I want you to tell me is not whether or not the United Nations is right to adjudge those occupations as illegal. That's the world we live in. That's the international law that we're operating under. But what those people should do to make their point internationally, if not this. Surely it's preferable to anything else they can do, such as launching rockets, such as mounting terror attacks. What are their options? Sandra's in Muswell Hill. Sandra, what would you like to say?
Yeah, exactly. For me, this is positive proof, James, that the Israeli government, and I have to say that statistics show that something like 96% of the Israeli people are behind this particular administration, apparently.
No, it's a tiny number. Netanyahu's leading a coalition because his party didn't gain enough support to govern. But it's a bit like David Cameron with Nick Clegg. It's not.
Yeah, sorry, James. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to say what I want to say.
Yes, of course.
This to me is positive proof that this administration is really not interested in peace. Because if you say that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic and therefore not to be contemplated, then what do they do? As you say, what have we got left? We've got kids throwing stones and being thrown into prison if they get caught for 20 years. We've got people shooting off stupid rockets that just don't do they don't hit their targets, and they're just stupid.
Yeah, you still wouldn't want them. You still wouldn't want them landing in Muswell Hill, Sandra.
No, I wouldn't, and that's why I'm saying BDS is the way forward. And to say that this is anti-Semitic is, for me, to prove that you don't want peace. You don't want any move forward by the Palestinians. It's been nearly 7 decades for these people. I speak as a Jew. I speak as a non-Zionist Jew. I've been told how anti-Semitic I am about...
Self-hating, Sandra, I think, is the phrase du jour.
All those things. And for me, my father said to me, we Jews... we should leave the planet a better place than we found it. And so if I'm a self-hating Jew, I don't think so. And I don't think that the people in Israel, this administration, are leaving the planet a better place than they found it.
What do you think Boris was playing at? I appreciate that's a leading question.
I am so disappointed in Boris. In fact, I got very depressed yesterday because I thought, a man as intelligent as this, what is he doing? And then I realized, of course, that he's a performer. I mean, he's been acting being the mayor and doing a very good job. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch couldn't have done better, I don't think. He's going to be acting being a candidate for the Conservative leadership. And then he's there amongst all these Zionists. They all think he's fabulous. So it's like opening the fridge, the light comes on, Boris performs.
I think you're right. There's a danger of overcomplicating it, isn't there? He knows exactly what buttons to press when he's in front of the right audience. He probably misjudged slightly the scale of the response. He thought it might be confined to the room he was in, but honestly, it was a misjudgment. But as you say,
absolutely. And you remember, James, that there used to be a time when politicians would say certain things for a local audience, and then for an international audience. Well, I'm afraid we are, this global village.
You're right. We don't live in that world.
There's no such thing as a local audience anymore, is there?
No, indeed, there's not. That's why we're leading Britain's conversation officially, but leading the world's conversation in reality. Or you were, at least, Sandra. This is what balance sounds like. It's possible both sides have done bad. It's possible both sides have a point. But when it comes to the internationally recognised illegality of the occupation, what are people opposed to it supposed to do to bring pressure to bear upon the illegal occupiers? What? And then, of course, you're perfectly entitled to tell me it's not an illegal occupation. You're perfectly entitled to call me the C word, as my most recent texter has done. But that's not the argument we're having. That'd be a fascinating phone-in. Am I the C word? 0345 6060 973. But we won't be able to do that. We'll have to wait until after the watershed. This is what balance actually sounds like. Balance, the opposite of balance. That's what happens when an Israeli Prime Minister can stand up in public and say the Holocaust wasn't Hitler's idea, and have supporters in this country in the 21st century defending and apologising for him. 0345 6060 973. Don't forget the last caller, Sandra, described herself as Jewish. So, if she's anti-Semitic, it'd be an interesting intellectual somersault to have undertaken. Keith's in North Finchley. Keith, what would you like to say?
Yes, good morning. Well, the thing with regard to the BDS is that there's two things. First of all, the Palestinian Authority itself are against the boycott. That's the first thing.
Do you know why?
Why? Because they don't believe in the boycotting of Israeli goods. for furthering something that is not going to make any difference.
No,
now, the BDS,
that's not why.
The BDS...
That's not why. Let's make sure we're dealing on first principles. They feel it would undermine their negotiating position. It would disincentivize the
whatever
process.
Reason you're going to come out with.
It's not me. It's them. It's them.
They are specifically against the BDS.
But it's important to understand why, isn't it?
I think it's important to understand what the BDS are trying to do.
Okay, you carry on, Keith.
It, James. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Now, the BDS, as you rightly said, balance. What the BDS are trying to do is delegitimize Israel. For the purpose of supposedly forcing Israel's hand to some sort of peace deal or some sort of...
I'm going to have to clarify your statements, even though you don't like being clarified. The BDS campaign calls for, and I quote, various forms of boycott against Israel until it meets its obligations under international law. There's no notion of...
Let me explain to you. Let me ask you. You keep using the word... You laugh because of your typical... patronising attitude.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the people who started it... No, you're right. Why would we listen to the people who started the campaign when we can listen to Keith tell us why they did it? Go on, Keith.
James, I can guarantee you one thing. I've been to the West Bank. Yes. I guarantee you haven't.
You're absolutely right, Keith.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I've been there.
I've never been to Nazi Germany either, but I have opinions about that. I've never been to the moon, but I have opinions about that.
With regard, you use the terminology of illegal occupation under national law.
Right, Keith, I'm just gonna fade you down for a second for people listening, then we'll bring you back. This is the sound of someone who doesn't want the conversation to be had at all, okay? So you make a sweeping statement about why something is happening, you have it pointed out to you why the people doing it say they're doing it, you poo-poo that, then you go for the ad hominem attack upon the journalist trying to maintain a little bit of openness and scrutiny, and you start picking holes at him personally, using words like patronising, typical you've never been to the West Bank, as if that's relevant to anything. All the people living there, according to Keith's logic, suddenly have a better opinion about the issue than he does. And the final element of not wanting to have the conversation at all is making a sweeping statement about what it's designed to do, delegitimize Israel, and then completely ignore the stated aim of the campaign as explained by the people who are actually doing it. So, Keith, carry on.
Let me explain. The BDS is effectively delegitimizing Israel. We're talking about balance.
Oh, and then repetition. Ad infinitum.
Let me finish.
I wish you'd start, Keith.
Behind the microphone and press.
Here we go. More about me.
Let me finish.
Could you start?
Have a little bit of respect for someone who has an opposing view to yourself.
It's not a view.
Now,
I'm talking about facts.
I'm talking about the BDS. The fact of the matter is, if you want a peace treaty, if you want, you have to respect there are two sides to the argument. And what the BDS are not doing is talking about the fact that there are two sides to the argument. They're trying to force Israel's hand. They are not talking about the cessation of terror. They are not talking about the legitimate rights of Israel to exist. Now, that is called balance. No, they're not.
Yeah, oh, yes, they are.
They believe in the boycotting of all of Israel.
Until its responsibilities under internet... No, of course.
In Holborn. You had people going to Sainsbury's in Holborn trying to clear foods off the food
Have you ever been to Sainsbury's in Holborn, Keith?
Yes, I have, thank you.
There you go. That's really relevant.
And what's irrelevant is the fact that I have been to the West Bank. You talk about an illegal occupation.
No, the United Nations does.
Tell me which resolution then, James. Come on.
What do you mean tell you which resolution?
Tell me how the United Nations says it's illegally occupied.
So you want me to sit here and Google the list of the United Nations resolutions concerning Israel and Palestine? Do you really want me to do that?
Yeah, no, I want you to tell me because you use the terminology. Tell me before you Google it.
I'll just Google it now.
No, you're Googling it. So what you're saying is you're talking out of your head.
No, I'm looking up recorded facts, Keith.
No. You're Googling.
Yes.
I will explain to you without Googling anything. You're probably referring to United Nations resolution.
Fade him down again.
242.
Fade him down again.
Most famous resolutions.
This is Keith now telling me what I think and what I base my thoughts upon. And when I suggest politely that we look it up on a resource that we can both access and look at the historically recorded facts, he says, no, let me tell you what you think he says and let me tell you why you're wrong when he's describing a position I don't even hold. Carry on, Keith.
James, the other thing is you have an
Me again.
with Israel.
Me again.
An obsession.
Me again.
An obsession.
An
with
obsession.
Israel.
No, I don't.
Why do you not talk about, for example, Turkey's occupation of northern Cyprus, or Turkey's?
Because Boris Johnson didn't cause a controversy in Turkey yesterday, and I don't live in a city, or rather I do live in a city where Boris Johnson is mayor. Just out of my description of what you were doing, trying to close down the debate, trying to ignore the facts, trying to turn it into a conversation about me, and refusing to listen to recorded historical events upon which we could both agree, and instead telling me why I think what I think based upon things I don't think. Is any of that unfair, do you think, Keith? Any of that representation?
Very easy to silence me out.
Very easy to silence you out, Keith. Finally something we can agree on. 10:46.